ASP.NET MVC Interview Question and Answer Part 2. So we can start from question number 11, that is question number 11. What is the difference between 3-layer architecture and MVC architecture? 3-layer architecture separates the application into 3 components, which is consist of present layer, business layer and data access layer. In 3-layer architecture, user interacts with the presentation layer, and 3-layer are linear architecture. MVC architecture separates the application into 3 components, which consist of model, view and controller. In MVC architecture, user interacts with the controller with the help of view, and MVC is a triangle architecture. MVC does not replace 3-layer architecture. Typically 3-layer architecture and MVC used together. MVC act as the presentation layer. Now we go on question number 12. What is the difference between MVC web form and what is the difference between ASP.NET web form and ASP.NET MVC? The main difference between ASP.NET web form and ASP.NET MVC are given below. First we will talk about MVC web form. ASP.NET web form. ASP.NET web form follows the traditional event driven development model. ASP.NET web form has server controller. ASP.NET web form has a state management. ASP.NET web form has a file based URL, means file exists in the URL must have its physically. ASP.NET web form follows the web form syntax. In ASP.NET web form ASPX example, view are tightly coupled to the code behind ASP.CS. ASP.NET web form has a master pages for consist look and feel. ASP.NET web form has user control for code reusability. ASP.NET web form has built-in data control and best rapid development with powerful data access. ASP.NET web form is not open source. Now we go on ASP.NET MVC. ASP.NET MVC is a lightweight and follow MVC model view controller pattern based on development model. ASP.NET MVC has HTML helpers. ASP.NET MVC has no automatic state management techniques. ASP.NET MVC has root based URL, means URL are divided into controller and action, and moreover it is based on controller, not a physical file. ASP.NET MVC follow customized index as a default. In MVC.NET is ASP.NET MVC, which views and logics are kept separately. ASP.NET MVC has layout for consist for a field. ASP.NET MVC has partial view for code reusability. ASP.NET MVC is lightweight, provide full control over markup and supports many features that allow fast and agile development. Hence it been it is best for the developing interaction web application with latest web standard. ASP.NET ASP.NET Web MVC is a open source. Now we go on question number 13. What is model view in the ASP.NET MVC? ASP.NET MVC view model is a class that contain field which are represent strongly typed view. It is used to pass data from controller to strongly typed view. Key points of view model. View model contain field that represent in the view. For label for, editing for, display for, helpers. View model can have specific validation rule using data annotation. View model can have multiple entities and objects for different data models and data source. Question number 14. Explain ASP.NET pipelines. The details of ASP.NET pipelines is given following. Routing is the first step in the ASP.NET pipeline. Typically it is a pattern of matching system that match incoming request to the registered URL pattern in the route table. The URL routing models system dot web routing dot URL routing model. The URL routing model system.web.routing.url routing model is a class which matches an incoming HTTP request to a registered route pattern in the routing table. Second point, controller initialization. The MVC handlers initiate the real processing inside the ASP.NET MVC pipeline by using process request method. This method uses control factory instance. Default is system.web.mvc.default controller factory to create corresponding controller. Action execution. Action execution occurs is the following step. When controller is initialized, the controller calls its own invoke action by method passing the details of the chosen action method. This is handled by iAction invoker. After choosing appropriate action model binder, default is system.web.mvc default model binder. Retrieve the data from the incoming HTTP request and do the data type conversion, data validation such as required or date format, etc. and also take care of input values mapping to that action method parameters. Now authentication filters was introduced with ASP.NET MVC 5 that runs prior to authorization filter. It is used to authenticate a user. Authentication filter process user credential in the request and provide corresponding principal. Prior to ASP.NET MVC 5, use authorization filter for authentication and authorization to a user. By default, authentication attribute is used to perform authentication. You can easily create your own custom authentication filter by implementing authentication filter. Authorization filter allow you to perform authorization process for authenticate user. For example, role-based authentication for a user, role-based authentication for a user to access resource. By default, authorize attribute is used to perform authorization. You can also make your own custom authorization filter by implementing authorization filter. Action filter are also executed before on action executing and after on action executed an action is executed. Action filter interface provide you two method: on action executing and on action executed method, which will be executed before and after the action gets executed respectively. You can also make your own custom action by filtering implementation action filter. For more about filters, refer you when action is execute, it processes the user input with the help of model, business model and data model, and prepare action result. Result execution occur following: result filter are executed before on result executing and after result executed. The action result is executed. iResult filter interface provide you two method: on result executing on result executed method, which will be executed before and after an action get executed respectively. You can also make your own custom result filter implementing iFilters. Action result is prepared for performing the operation user input with the help of BAL and DAL. The action result can be type the action result type can be view result, partial view result, redirect to root result, redirect result, content result, JSON result, file result, and MPT result. Various result type provided by ASP.NET MVC can be categorized into two: view type and non-view result type. The result type which render and return an HTML page to the browser falls into view result. Categorize another result type which result only data either in text format, binary format, or JSON format fall into the view result category. View initialization and rendering execution occur in the following step: view result type. Example: view and partial view are represented by iView system.web.mvc.iview interface and rendered by the appropriate view engine. The process is handled by iView engine bracket system.web.mvc.iweb engine interface of the view engine. By default, ASP.NET MVC provide web form and razor view engine. You can also create your own custom engine by using iView engine interface and can register your custom view engine into the into your ASP.NET MVC application. HTML helper are used to write input, create link based on routes, Ajax enabled form, linked, and much more. HTML helper are extension method of HTML helper class and can be further extended very easily. In more complex scenario, it might be render a form with the client side validation with the help of JavaScript and jQuery. What is routing in the MVC? In MVC.NET, routing is a pattern matching system that monitor incoming request and figure out what to do with the request. At runtime, routing engine use the route table for matching incoming request URL pattern against the URL pattern defined in the route table. You can register one or more URL pattern in a route table at application start event. When routing engine find the match in the route table for the incoming request, it forward the request to the appropriate controller and action. If there is no match in route table or incoming request URL, it returns 404 status. Now we go on question number 17. What is the attribute routing and how it defined? ASP.NET MVC and Web API to support a new type of writing called attribute routing. In this routing, attributes are used to define route. Attribute routing provides you more control over the URLs by defining route directly on action, and controller is your ASP.NET MVC application and Web API. We have 2 points: control level routing and action level routing. You can define route at control level which apply to all action within a controller unless specific route is added on to an action. Action level routing. You can define route at action level which is applied to a specific action which is within the controller. Attribute should be configured before convention based routing. When you combine attribute routing and convention based routing, action which do not have route attribute for defining attribute based routing will work according to convention based routing. In the above example, contact action will be according to convention based routing. When you have only attribute routing, action which does not have a route attribute, for example defining route attribute routing, which not be the part of attribute routing. In this way they can't access from the outside as a URL. When to use attribute routing? The convention based routing is complex to support certain URI pattern that can common is RESTful API, but by using attribute routing you can define URI pattern very easily. For example, often contain child resource like client have a order, movies have action, books have author, and so on. It's naturally creative URI that reflects the relation like client one order. This type URI is difficult to create using convention based routing, although it can be done. The result done scale well if you have many controller or resources type. With the attribute routing, it is pretty much easy to define route for this you simply add attribute to the controller action. Question number 19, how to enable attribute routing in the ASP.NET. Enable attribute routing in your application is simple. Just add to call route.map mvc attribute route method with the register route method to route configs.css file. You can also combine attribute routing with the convention based. How do you define attribute routing area for How do you define attribute routing for area in ASP.NET MVC? You can also define attribute routing for controller that belongs to area by using route area attribute. When you define attribute routing for all controllers within the area, you can safely remove the area registration class for the area. This is the second part of interview. ASP.NET MVC is closed. We will touch soon. On third part. Thank you very much.